All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Ask SMB Owners Expert Webinar Series. Today, I would like to introduce to you Carlton Finley. Carlton spent 35 years in the hospitality industry as an award-winning chef, hotel director, and restaurant owner. Carlton made a career change to the financial industry. He has been in financial services for 25 years. Using proven processes learned from the hospitality industry, he created the MISE process to help business owners, responsible parents, and individuals protect what's most important to them. For business owners to improve profitability and keep good employees, by the way, at no cost to the employer. For responsible parents and individuals to teach the three parts of your family's financial house to protect families, to help them save and make money so that they can enjoy their family. Currently, Carlton serves as a volunteer community educator in the Dominican Republic with his family. So Carlton, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Let me share my screen for a moment. Excellent. Can I get just a little thumbs up if you can see myself and the screen? Awesome. Awesome.
Yes.
So no doubt you're probably wondering, okay, how to make 2022 your best year financially. It could be an auspicious goal, but I appreciate being one of the first for the year because right now, I'm sure each of you at some point have made a New Year's resolution. And for many of us, those resolutions have a lot to do with how we're going to make this year better than last year for a number of reasons. And so I know you're on this webinar today because one is probably curiosity, and two, you probably are very much sincerely interested because for whatever level you are today, you want to see more. As humans, we all have a desire to want to see things better than they are today. And it doesn't matter what our current finances are today. The purpose of today is to do a couple of things. The first of which is to teach you that you really can make 2022 a better year financially. How? By using very simple financial strategies without having to have a financial degree, without having to be securities certified. And I'm going to show you how to do these today, regardless of where you are as far as income, as far as savings, as far as the debt level. Because what we're going to go over today are the strategies, the principles. And I'm sure you will agree, principles are timeless. The different tactics that are needed to be able to follow it afterwards may adjust per the person, but the principles and the strategies don't change. So as far as today's agenda, here's what we're going to talk about. Resolutions. I'll introduce myself to you afterwards because I'm not that important. And then we'll go over what are the three keys to your financial house. And then how to be successful. Probably the most important part of this presentation is how to be successful. We can talk about many different things. We can throw statistics, but if we aren't shown how to be successful, it was for nothing. And so that is what we're going to discuss today. And what's next? Anytime we put something in place, we need to see the results and we need to know what the next step is until we get to where we want to be. As mentioned, the beginning of every year, we all make resolutions. And tried to find resolutions that I'm sure would resonate with more than just a couple of people. For some, when we think about resolutions, it usually has to do with health first. So if we smoke, we're trying to quit smoking. Eat healthy, you know, there are two groups of people, those who eat to live and those who live to eat. And I have no problem saying that I'm a person who lives to eat. As Beatrice mentioned, after spending more than 35 years in the hospitality industry, food is a love. But, you know, some may not always eat healthy. Some need to lose weight. So they use those as New Year's resolutions to start back off to something else. For some, it's a better job. And we just have to look back to 2021 to a term that has been coined called the Great Resignation. Many people are looking for a better job. More than 2/3 of the population that was questioned either changing jobs or open to the thought of changing jobs. And that is what fueled the term the Great Resignation. So people are looking for a better job. For our purpose here today, many people want to pay off debt. And then the last one I thought was interesting, to try to be more assertive. What does that have to do with all of the rest of these resolutions? Because to be more assertive basically entails action. And we're going to see how that relates later in this presentation. But as you notice in the quote on the screen, a study conducted by researchers at the University of Scranton found that 23% of people quit working on their resolution just 2 weeks into the year. And only 19% of those who make resolutions stick over the long haul. And we're going to find out why that is the case and how does it apply to what we're going to talk about. A lot of it has to do with the fact that many people never take the time, take the opportunity to educate themselves. Does that mean take hour-long classes or take college classes? No, it just means taking the opportunity to know more about what you want to learn about to change than you did before, which is why I want to make sure I say thank you to each of you today. You're online, you're watching this webinar, listening to my voice. You don't know me from Adam. And so you are, first of all, trying to make sure what's the noise, how much of this I can actually use, and how much of this is baloney. Whether we say it or not, those are the things that we're thinking about. And so I want to make sure that this is not about selling. This is not about trying to get you to follow me or be a follower or a friend or a connection. After spending 35 years in the hospitality industry, there was something that I realized. Not only that it was the industry that I truly, truly enjoyed. It gave me the majority of the things that I have today. It gave me the foundation to continue to grow. But one of the things I always found out is that those people who I worked with, they were actually closer than my family. I spent the majority of my waking hours with them. So when they hurt, I hurt. When they went through tragedy, I went through tragedy. And it's ironic because tragedy is what brought me from the food and beverage industry into the financial industry. I mentioned that those who I worked with were family. So when they lost a loved one or a loved one got sick, many times their family weren't in a position to be able to give them the help or the support they needed, even though they wanted to. So what did they do? They came to their work family. Whether it was passing a plate to help take care of something financially, or in an event of 1 or 2 cases, one in particular, we helped pay for the funeral. And so that led me to the point, well, I know this person worked. I worked with them. I know they made money. So how is it that they made money, loved their family, took care of their family, but we're in this situation to where we need others to help pay for it? So that brought me to the financial services industry. And to solidify me being in the financial services industry, I had another tragedy. My father died. My father had worked 2 jobs for the majority of my life, which I'm sure is the case with many of you. I watched my father work at Ford, work at a service station. Wasn't that he squandered money, wasn't that he was frivolous with money, but when he died, the things that he put in place weren't there. And I knew that it wasn't because he wasn't trying to put it there. So my attitude was solidify that what do I need to do to be able to help those who I come in contact with to not be in that same situation. And so that's who I am. As you see, that's a picture of my family as we are community educators in the Dominican Republic. We split time between there and Michigan. That what I explained is basically a journey. The struggle, the tragedy, the discovery is the education that I'm going to take you through. And then afterwards, we'll talk about the success, what I found, what I was able to learn from that struggle and the discovery or the education. It brings us to the 3 keys of our financial house. Now, you've heard of financial house, and you probably have an idea of what those 3 keys are. But one of the things I need to make sure I make clear is that none of this is going to be speculation. None of it is theory. None of it is designed to make it to where you don't understand it. If after you listen and take part of this webinar, and you decide, I can do this on my own, excellent. If you decide, well, you know, I can do it, but I may need some help, excellent. The purpose of this webinar is to give you the information to be able to make an informed decision of what you do after this hour is over with. So the 3 keys of our financial house begins with the foundation, then the walls, then the roof. Simple as that. As you've seen people build houses before, if the foundation isn't solid, if the foundation isn't firm, it doesn't matter how beautiful the house is. Eventually, that house is going to come down. If the foundation is firm and the walls are uneven, there is no way that the roof is going to stay on. If the roof falls, the walls will fall. And so each depends on the other. And that's what we're going to talk about today in relation to how we can really get control of debt, how we can get out of debt, and how we can use these strategies that we're going to talk about. So before we get going a little further, by a show of hands, how many have seen the description of a financial house before? Okay, only a couple? All right, no problem. That will be pretty interesting then. So I know as we move forward, there will probably be some questions. And what I'm going to ask is that if you want, please put the questions in the chat, and I'm going to try to do the presentation and look down. And if I can answer the question while we're going on, I'll answer it. If not, we'll hold the questions to the end and we'll review and answer the questions at that time. Because I don't want anyone to think that they didn't get what they needed. So the first part of our financial house is the foundation. There are 3 parts to the foundation. Even though a person may say, well, the foundation is insurance. Well, basically, yes, but it's still divided into 3. The primary part of our foundation is life insurance. Because life insurance and all of its many different forms, doesn't matter if it's universal, indexed, if it's annuities, if it's cash value, if it's term, regardless of what type of life insurance it is only designed to do one thing, and to do the one thing that we can't predict, we can't avoid, and we can't stop: death. It is the one thing that will stop your house from being built. It is the one thing that will stop all of your dreams, all of your goals from coming to fruition. So in the end, that is the most important thing that needs protection. Many times people will ask me, well, what type of insurance do we need to get? Do we need to get whole life? Do we need to get term? What's the best kind to get? You know, it doesn't really matter until you go over an individual's personal situation, because all are good to a degree. They're not good if it doesn't fit your circumstances. So that's first. It's not about primarily which is which. Each serves a purpose. The second part of our foundation that is important is health insurance. because the purpose of health insurance is to protect us, protects our lives, ours individually, and those of our family so that we don't die prematurely. You could say, well, okay, what's the best type of health insurance to get? Again, it is based on each individual case. This picture we have talks about the 10 essential elements that are part of the marketplace insurance. Those are things that they make sure that are included no matter what the policy is, because those are things that are essential to living a life as healthy as possible. Now, anything above and beyond that, that's up to the individual and their individual cases. The third part of our foundation is what we call property and casualty. In short, that's the insurance that covers our stuff. And no one wants to continue to replace stuff. Sometimes we get mad. Why do I need to buy car insurance? I buy car insurance and I pay for it every month, every year, and I haven't had an accident in 5 years. I wish you could get a rebate, but that's not the purpose of the insurance. The purpose of the insurance is to cover you in the event of an accident. Well, I have mortgage. I got insurance on my house and I've paid for it for 10 years, 15 years. Why do I need to pay it? In the event something happens to your home. I'm sure each of you have heard of an example of someone who had it, didn't have it, and then tragedy struck. And so that is the reason for the foundation. You may say, well, okay, whether it's life insurance, health insurance, property and casualty, how does this help me? Because as we mentioned, without the proper foundation, the walls can't grow. We can't build the walls. We can't put the roof on top. The foundation has to be firm and secure. So with this in mind, what can we do today? So if we look at life insurance, the first thing that we need to do is to understand what's sufficient for me, my family. If I'm a business owner, what's sufficient for my business owners, my partners, even my managers. We live in a world today where 31% of Americans who understand insurance don't have it. But they all agree that more than half of Americans, and this is a quote taken from LIMRA and the Life Matters Institute, it says more than half of Americans say they haven't purchased life insurance because they're unsure of how much they need or what type to buy. But then a third of them believe that they would have to pay taxes on a death benefit, that the proceeds aren't going to be what they expect them to be. And I try to explain to them that those proceeds are guaranteed. That is a contract. So those death benefits, unless a loan was taken out against it, that is your beneficiaries' money. 30% of Americans realize that they don't have enough life insurance. Well, what about when it comes to health insurance? We know we've just had open enrollment end December 15th. And yes, there were more people who got life insurance last year than the year before, probably because of COVID. Everyone in our families have been touched in one way, shape, or form by COVID. By a show of hands, if you've either had COVID, someone in your family has had COVID, or someone close to your family has had COVID. Almost everybody. And so before the pandemic, there were certain things that we just weren't worried about. After COVID, these are all things that we are concerned about because we now are touched personally by them. When it comes to health insurance, in the end, what can we do today? The simplest answer is to have it. It doesn't matter whether it's the marketplace or our employer. We have to understand what's sufficient for our family once again, and to do our best not to overspend, and Lord forbid, not to pay twice for it. Well, what does pay twice for mean for life insurance? I'll go back just for a second. Sometimes we buy insurance because we know we need it, but we don't buy enough. Later on, we have to buy it again, pay twice. And normally when we pay twice, we're paying more than what we need to pay because we didn't buy what we needed at the moment for whatever the reason is. That's why it is important to understand what's sufficient. And that is the same for each type of insurance. It brings us to the next part of our financial house, the walls. Just as with the house having 4 outer walls, there are 4 walls in our financial house. First wall is income. Second wall is expenses, taxes, and savings. Now, it doesn't mean in this example that each of the walls have to be the same size. Not the same size, but they all have to be balanced. In other words, there have to be a certain amount of income to a certain amount of savings, certain amount of taxes, certain amount of expenses. And the more we have them in balance, the more secure our financial house is. That's what we need. It's not to say that if you don't make a certain dollar amount that your walls are not complete. No. Income is not the main part of this. Actually, the 3 main parts of this are the expenses, taxes, and savings. Expenses, because that is something we directly impact. For me, I mentioned from the outset, I love food, and I am truly a foodie. We'll go to a restaurant and see something I enjoy. I'm taking a picture of it. And they tell me how much it costs. I'm like, okay, I still like it. I still want it. But I have control of that. Taxes, sometimes we feel we don't have control over, but we do. Savings is usually the last on the list that we look at because many times savings is the last thing that we think about because after we get our income and we pay our bills, taxes get theirs, there's nothing that we consider is enough to save, so we don't save, or not as much as we could. So we mentioned the key to the walls is everything has to be in balance. We want to maximize to the best of our ability our income. And that doesn't necessarily mean change jobs for more income. Doesn't necessarily mean work 2 jobs in order to do that. But what it does mean is that we need to be in control of our expenses. We need to maximize our savings. We also need to understand that when it comes to the control, the biggest thing that we have as far as expenses many times other than our utilities, which are necessities, is credit card debt. So we need to control those. Well, understanding what the walls, the second part of our home is, it brings us to our next question. Well, what can we do today? Well, the first thing we need to do is to control credit card debt. Now, this is a principle that I want everyone to understand because your credit card score is actually based on 5 different things. The first thing that your credit card score is based on is your payment history. So that makes up 35% of your credit score, which is why it's important that we pay on time. The next important part of our credit score is the amount owed. So 30% of our credit card score comes with how much is owed. Now, to give you an idea of what that means, let's say you have a credit card debt or credit card limit of $1,000. Ideally, you want to keep that credit card debt to 30% or less, so $300 or less. You may say, I can't do that. But that's the idea, because once it says you are using more than 33% of your credit card debt, it drops your credit card score. Next is history, how long you have had credit with certain companies. That's only 15%. New credit is only 10%. The types of credit or the credit mix only makes up 10%. So you see how important it is that we get a control of our spending because it makes up 30% of our credit card debt. Give you an idea, if you were to take your credit cards, and for many of us, we probably have gotten to the point where we pay a little more because we want more of it to go to the interest, to the principal, as opposed to paying extra in interest. Some have the habit at the end of the month, whatever they charge, they pay it off, which is commendable, but everyone can't do that. So if you look at your credit card debt and you are paying more each month on a certain credit card, if you can pay the minimum and still have enough over, you take one of your cards that you have the least amount owing, you pay that off. You put all your extra into that to get it down to zero. You may say, well, why? Because you are starting to reduce the amount owed. Once that card is down to zero, you put it up, do whatever you need to do with it. And you take that same process and you put it toward the next credit card. Now, does this mean we can do it every month, every year? No. But if you can, that's beautiful because now you are in control. Another thing that we can do is start saving. You've all heard, I'm sure you've heard the term pay yourself first. And it is just to create a habit, to create a mentality. You may think, okay, well, how much do I need to save in order to pay myself first? Anything done for 30 days becomes a habit. So let's say for the sake of conversation, each week you take 10% of your earnings and you save it. You put it in something that you can't see it. Well, after a certain period of time, out of sight, out of mind, but habitually, now that starts to grow. We have certain jobs that give us IRAs or 401ks. Well, that's money that we can put aside. As we put aside, that's paying ourselves first because it's done with pre-tax dollars, right? Ultimately, we have a goal of trying to create an emergency fund. And again, if you notice, none of these are based on how much we make. None of these are based on how much our debt is. Wherever you are, you can begin. You could take that paying yourself first to create a 3-month emergency fund. Imagine how much anxiety you would relieve from yourself if you knew by the end of the year you have in an account 3 months' salary that you haven't touched. It hasn't hurt you, but you know that in case something comes up, you have that. Beyond credit cards, beyond waiting for the next check, that could be a goal, a resolution. And we can also take advantage of savings programs. Usually toward the beginning of the year and then again toward July, August, different banks and credit unions particularly will put together a Christmas savings club where you can put certain amount of money in preparation for Christmas presents. Capital One, not that I'm endorsing them over anyone else, but they have it to where you can create a savings account just for the purpose of saving for a certain item or a certain reason. So take advantage of those savings programs. Third, look for ways to cut expenses. Ideally, we want to avoid overpaying or paying twice for items. If you were to look at your expenses, see how many times you've paid twice for an item, or find out how many times you've overpaid for something that you didn't know it until after you bought it. It's sort of like the same principle that when you go buy a car, after you buy the car, you drive down the street, that's the only car you see. Yeah, sick of seeing that car. But it's whatever we focus on is what we're able to see. So if we're able to see where we spend our money, it can help us to be in control of it. And then also, finally, we want to be conscious. of the effects of the pandemic. We have a supply chain issue that was in part created because of the pandemic. Now, because of that, there are certain things that we understand we're going to pay more for. That is going to be very difficult to find ways around it. But if we're conscious of it beforehand, that makes us all the better prepared for it. So those are just 3 things that we can do to help us with the walls of our home. It brings us to the next part of our financial house, the roof. And the roof is only based on 2 things, our dreams and our goals. In the end, we need both of them. We have to have both in our life, because as your dreams will ensure that we stay focused, our goals are what we are going to do in order to make the lives of our family better. Dreams we can consider to be our wish list of things that we'd love to do. Oh, I'd love to have a boat. Oh, I'd love to live in Florida. I'd love to take a cruise. Those are our dreams. Our goals, what do we need to do in order to be prepared for retirement? What do we need to do in order to make sure we take care of our kids when it comes to education? What do we need to do in order to expand our house? Those are goals. That's what we're living for. That's what we're working for. I mentioned my father from the outset. He worked for Ford for 35 years. And he got mad at me because I didn't want to work for the big 3, Ford in particular. And I told him my reason why. He introduced me to a friend of his. And I says, why do you work at the place? He always talked about he didn't like it, but you're still there. He says, you have to be at the plant 30 years. You take the first 10 years of telling yourself it's worth it. You take the next 10 years telling yourself how long you've been there. And you take the last 10 years counting down. I said, that's no way to live going to work. He says, well, why am I going to work at the plant? To take care of my family. And if that's what I have to tell myself to stick for 30 years, that's what I'll do. He says, but for you, you find something you love and you do it, which is why I never went to work for the plant. I understood that we're all working for and towards something. The things we do today make our dreams and our goals our reality. There is was a business philosopher. His name was Jim Rohn. And he made a statement that always got me. He said, we will all face some kind of pain. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. In the end, it's your choice. So the question is, what are we going to do? Some things that usually stop us from reaching our goals, we're going to talk about next. What can we do? When it comes to goals and or dreams, we need to create specific and measurable goals. The more specific, the better. We could say, I need to lose weight. Or I can be specific or more specific and say, I need to lose 25 pounds by April. What did I create? I created a specific and measurable goal. 25 pounds by April. I know by the end of January, if I haven't lost 5, there's a good chance I may not make that goal. We can't inspect what we don't expect. If we don't expect to be at a certain place, then what can we expect? And my favorite one, if we don't write it down, it's no good. An unwritten goal is just a wish. The moment you write it down and tell somebody, now that goal has weight. After we create this specific and measurable goal, what do we need to do next? We need to plan and track our progress. Even if we wanted to get out of debt, we mentioned one way, it's called the snowball plan, of being able to take our credit card debt and reduce them. We take what our extra is and put it on one. And once that one is paid, the money that we put on that one, we put to the next one. And it snowballs to where we reduce our credit card debt. Well, how did we get that? Well, it was a plan. And because we have a plan, now we can track it. You've all heard the saying, plan your work, work your plan. Probably those of you who are in business for yourselves right now, you keep telling yourself that. Plan your work, work your plan. But in order to be able to do that, you have to be honest with yourself first. And then when it comes to resolutions and being able to track our progress, we need to do one other thing. In order to make sure that these things are done, we have to be accountable to someone other than ourselves. For many of us, we use our spouse to be that person we're accountable to. Some of us, we hire coaches or mentors to be accountable to, because we understand once we have the goal that's specific and measurable, we have a plan, we know how to track it, we know how to go to work. But if I have a bad day and I don't tell anyone, and I have a bad week and I don't tell anyone, I have a bad month and I don't tell anyone, after that first month, it's easy now not to tell anyone. It's to help us to stay accountable and to help us to reach our goal. And the last part is to celebrate every success. There is something about not only getting out of debt or any of the goals that we mentioned in the first slide with resolutions. There is a huge difference between easy and simple. Getting in debt is easy. Getting out of debt isn't easy, but in many cases it is simple. Well, what's the difference between easy and simple? Easy is it's easy to do. It's easy to get in debt, just spend. It is simple to get out of debt. I understand the process. I understand what's necessary. I understand. Now to do it, it may not be as easy. Hence the reason for discipline. But in the end, it will be amazing. Amazing. Beatrice mentioned, and I mentioned, that I spent 35 years in the food and beverage industry. And in the food and beverage industry, there was this culinary term, French culinary term, called mise en place. Mise en place basically means everything in its place. And everything that we did in the kitchen, everything we did in a hotel was all based on this process. So I took that process, tweaked it, and used it toward financial services, helping individuals with their own financial house and business owners, helping to maintain and retain good employees. So the M in MEAS stands for meet. And that is basically a discussion about you, your goals, your dreams, your wishes. We will review the 3 parts of the financial house, but tailor it to your situation particularly. The I stands for identify. We analyze your current situation based on your needs, based on your analysis, based on your situation, and then identify the areas to adjust and correct. We mentioned when we come to making goals, they have to be specific and measurable. The S is strategy. We design the actions needed to address those concerns. We put those strategies in place as a plan in order to accomplish them. And then we put a timeline on it because it needs to be measurable and it needs to be time bound. And in the end, the most important part is the execution of it, to implement it. And then we provide a written outline of all of those actions so a person can track their progress. And then at predetermined times, we will review that progress, challenges, and results. That is the MEIS process. I gave you the process. If you choose to do it on your own, beautiful. Because it was given to me, showing how to make sure everything is in its place in a kitchen. The process is a principle. It's timeless. And so that is the 3 parts of the financial house. We've talked about the foundation, what makes up the foundation, life, health, property insurance, and 3 points or 3 ideas on how to adjust where we are today. We've talked about the walls, the 4 walls: income, expenses, taxes, and savings, that they don't have to be equal, but they do have to be balanced. And the roof, goals and dreams. And what we need to do today to look at it to see if our house is in place to be able to continue to be strong. These are the things that we are helping individuals with. I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. I mentioned Jim Rohn earlier. This is one of his quotes. It says, "Success is the natural consequence of consistently applying basic fundamentals." Has nothing to do with being smarter than everyone else, has nothing to do with being richer than everyone else. It is consistency and knowing those basic principles. So I appreciate it. If you have questions, I'm going to shut up and let Beatrice start back. And that concludes the 3 parts of the financial house and how we can make 2022 a better year financially.
Okay, we're going to open it up for questions. I do have a question for you, Carlton.
Yes, ma'am.
And my question is, in your experience, what area do you find people most of the time that's a really important area, but it's most neglected?
I think a lot of it has to do with, this is going to sound strange, but most people are caught in the action of reacting. And what I mean is that, yes, as you notice, nothing that I mentioned was difficult, but because we are busy living our lives, we're busy working, trying to take care of our family, we are now reacting. And because we're reacting, something as simple as just save some money. Well, I don't know about that. I ain't got time to save money. I got to keep going. I got to keep going. And so we perpetuate the same mistakes over and over again, whether it is insurance, whether it is taxes, whether it's expenses, whether it's credit. For example, my credit card is almost maxed. How much easier would it be to just pay it down? That's too much work. I'll apply for another credit card. There go another $3,000 credit limit.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, do we have any questions? Anybody else?
Good job. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith. I appreciate it as well. Thank you. I hope everyone found it enjoyable, informative, and not put anyone to sleep.
That was very informative. I enjoyed it. This is Jeanette. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. It was very informative. I like the phases, how you outlined the presentation and how you went through it. And it was a summary or culmination of, where you started. You started, but it got you to a desired end result. And I like the way it culminated. So yeah. But I will tell you this, just and I'll keep it quick. I have been known to do reacting, but the reaction comes from the planning that didn't go well. So I do a lot of planning, but sometimes when it doesn't go well, I have to end up doing some reacting. So I'm just gonna have to do some different things in my planning. And I do have a lot that does go well, but when it doesn't, I react.
I can relate with that. I can tell you, I can relate with that on so many levels. You know, for example, you've heard people say, okay, do you live a cash system where you don't use credit cards, you do everything with cash? I've tried that. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Now, granted, it's pretty strict, but then I've also done it with credit card. There are going to be times where living a cash system is beneficial. There's obviously times where living with a credit system is beneficial, but you have to understand where you are yourself and know where to go from there.
Yeah, I think you gave our listeners a lot to think about. I see Diane, you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question?
All right. I just wanted to say thank you. And one of the things that resonated with me was unwritten goals is just a wish. And I started writing my goals down and it made a huge difference. So I wanted to say thank you. And the other thing was can't inspect what you don't expect. So it's putting that onus on you to really be clear on your goals, I guess. So thank you.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
Daryl.
Yeah, well, first of all, the overview, Carlton, that was an excellent presentation because you cover all the basic concepts of finance. I used to be in finance, so really well done, very impressed. I don't really have any questions. It was very clear and directive. It's just like you say, it's people identifying their specific needs, seeing what's missing with your guidance. Can't really go wrong as long as you got all the information, right?
Exactly. And I think that is where many people find the challenges, because there is so much noise about what they should do. And that noise many times is individual tactics. But instead of teaching someone a tactic that will probably change or get adjusted, it's so much easier to just teach the principle that doesn't matter. If the principles we talked about, even if we talked about this in 2018, in 2019 and the pandemic, they are the exact same principles that we would still be following.
All right. And the reactions are your learning issues. So go through them, have them, and
exactly.
then, yeah, much appreciated.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Rod.
Carlton, you did a wonderful job. I appreciate all of it, and I think it's really impressive.
I think that just underlines the strategy that Carlton laid out, because he gave us more than a tactic. He literally laid out a strategy with the house and the, I can't say mise, well, everything in place, right?
Mise en place, exactly.
In there. And so he laid it out for us. So thank you, Carlton, for your presentation and for sharing that information. That was
You are
really
very
good.
welcome.
And so, Carlton, if you want to put your slide up one more time, if anybody else still have questions, so they know where to reach you. And I know you've put your link in the chat, so everyone can download the chat.
Let's do this.
And Carlton is, of course, on Alignable, so just type in Carlton Finley to find him. Okay, and so you have, yeah, the contact info here. If you have more questions, and then please follow up with Carlton one-on-one. Okay, thank you, Carlton. Okay,
Thank
and
you.
does anybody have any questions? This is the last chance to put out a question. Okay, good. Well, then this will conclude our meeting today. Carlton, thank you so much for coming here, sharing your expertise, giving us your time. Thank you, everyone, for coming and spending an hour with us. Again, you can find Carlton, and we will do this again next week on Thursday. We'll be announcing the next presentation, which will be a marketing presentation on how to utilize podcasting to grow your audience. So
No
thank you.
question, Beatrice, but if I may, Carlton, next time in the Detroit area, look me up.
Most definitely,
Please.
most definitely. You, I put a link, send me a message and let's go break bread.
Well, I've been known to eat a meal or two too.
Hey, I'm Cajun. I'll eat anything.
Agent, I see. Now look, we can go have some crawfish etouffee.
That sounds good. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and I will see you next Thursday. Take care.
You too.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye now.